for thousands of years, despite what the hunter-gatherer evolutionary basis say, humanity survives on grains. And you can see that throughout history. And so now what people are predominantly consuming, now the vitamins and the nutrients have been stripped out of, and people started getting really sick.
Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you to my channel. My name is Kimberly McIntyre for those of you that are new here. And if you've watched very many of my videos, you know that I love to create wonderful, healthy things in the kitchen. And so today I have a guest who feels the same, and she's going to share her story with us on, first of all, how she got started doing what she's doing. And hopefully she'll tell us a little bit about how this has had an impact on her health. So without further ado, I want to introduce Felicia, who has a YouTube channel called Grains and Grit. Felicia, thank you so much for being here today. And if you'll tell us a little bit about yourself and also maybe a little bit about your health story.
Yes, thanks for having me. So my name is Felicia, and I'm the creator behind the YouTube channel Grains and Grit. I've been doing this for about 2 years now. And and I teach all about real whole grains from a biblical perspective, specifically about milling your own wheat and grains in general, and that they're not the bad, evil demon that are portrayed now. So I've been milling my own wheat, baking bread, using whole grains for over a decade now. I started, I think as many of us did, where I listened to a talk from Sue Becker, the Do Not Eat the Bread of Idleness. A friend gave it to us. My husband and I listened to it and thought, yes, absolutely, we're doing this. Now, one thing is that I was only in my mid 20s whenever I started doing this, and I did not know how to cook. I definitely did not know how to bake. I was still learning how to cook, and then we decided to do this. So I got to figure things out on my own. And I was pretty much on my own. No one else. I mean, I only knew one other person that was really doing this, but they lived hours away. So it's not like I could go to their house to ask for help. There wasn't anything really on YouTube. Sue Becker, the Bread Bakers had their courses online, but their classes, but they were hours long, and I didn't necessarily have time to sit and watch it. And so I kind of had to figure things out on my own. A lot of trial and error. It took me years to get to where I am now. And then when I did, it clicked. And then 2020 happened. And everyone was all in the bread baking craze, and there was no flour. And then they started realizing, oh, wait, I've heard that you can mill your own grains. And I started seeing all the questions. And so, and so my husband said, well, you always wanted to start a YouTube channel. I think you should do this. And here we are. So it's funny because I said, well, really, this is so niche down. How many videos could I possibly make just dealing with milling grains? And here we are a few years later, hundreds of videos out, and I still have a
Endless. Absolutely.
long list of things to do. So you can make a ton of videos about this topic.
Absolutely. Just goes
Mhm.
on and on. Which is
Mm,
exciting. You can do so many healthy things that are not only healthy,
mm,
but delicious.
yes.
So many people have tried these diets
Mm,
that has this, I'll call it Franken food, and they call
mm,
it healthy and it's boring.
mm.
And so that's their thought, that's their mindset. And so when we start talking things like that, and they're like, is this even going to taste good?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it tastes
Mhm.
amazing.
I mean, and honestly, there's nothing better than freshly baked bread from the oven anyway. But to actually have real bread that you're tasting for the first time, and the flavor, and oh yeah, this it's hard to resist.
Absolutely. We were talking a little bit before, and I was telling her that when I would pull it out of the oven, my kids come for it and then it's gone.
Yeah,
Like, you just want to
yeah.
keep eating it. So, do you have a health story tied to this? That
Well, I think because we were so young when we started, my husband and I both, we were mid to late 20s. So not really a lot of health issues. I think we have now avoided a lot of health issues. Now, the biggest thing is my husband did have some things that at the time we didn't even really notice that they were health issues. I think a lot of people think that certain things are just normal. And so when we got married, he was actually having really bad heartburn, acid
Mhm.
reflux. Like I was really big into couponing at the time. And so I would buy the Prilosec, like really good deal
Mm.
with couponing, because it got so bad where he wasn't eating Tums all the time. Like he had ulcers in his stomach. He was, he dealt with digestion issues. He dealt with heartburn, all of that stuff. And again, we just kind of thought it's just normal. We didn't think much of it. And then I started milling my own wheat, baking bread. Now that still continued. It did not cure it immediately. So I will say some people have reached out to me and said, I'm eating this bread and I have heartburn, or I'm still having issues. I think the body needs some healing. And for him, it took healing. He also had major allergies. Anytime, that spring came around and pollen season, he is stacking Benadryl, Zyrtec D, like he's stacking them, like it's serious stuff. We eventually noticed that he wasn't having the heartburn. Took a few years down the road, because I think with the allergies, we also discovered butterbur, which is a herbal remedy I highly recommend for allergies. Butterbur, it's butter, burr, B-U-R. And he started taking that, as well as our diets were just getting better during allergy season. And he no longer needed the Zyrtec, the Benefit, the Benadryl. Every now and then, he may need a little bit, every now and then, but not near like it was. And so I think just over time, but yeah, that's the biggest thing for him. For me, I didn't have any health issues that I knew of. And since then, my kids have been raised on it. Yeah, they love it, and thank God I have it, because they are voracious eaters. None of my kids have been those picky eaters. I see kids and they don't eat, and it baffles my brain, because my kids are not like that. They play hard, they eat hard. And thank God I have this, because it's I would say, cheaper way to feed them the highest quality food, but knowing that it is good food and they're getting so many good nutrients that are good for their body, for something that actually is not super expensive, like a bunch of organic fruits and vegetables.
So let's take a step back for a minute, because some of our viewers could be a little bit confused because they don't really even understand what it is that we're talking about
Yeah.
as far as the bread. So if you'll tell us a little bit about that and how it is so different from anything that they're going to find in the store.
Oh, yes. So the biggest thing that you have to understand, and we talked about this beforehand, is you have to realize that most likely, if you've lived in the United States or any westernized country, I would say most likely you have never actually had real bread in your life. If the only bread that you've ever had are things that are breads that's been served in a restaurant, in your typical bakeries, what's sold in the grocery store, if you have bought flour from the grocery store, those type of places, unless you've been to like a super ultra specialty type bakery or something, you probably have never had real bread. And that is because that the only thing that we pretty much have on the market nowadays is white flour, some sort of that. And what they did over 100 years ago was they decided that, hey, we can make white fluffy flour, which is more shelf stable, by removing the bran and the germ. And so this is when steel rolling mills were invented during the Industrial Revolution, and they started coming out by the 1920s. White flour was available for the masses, and white flour was generally seen as a rich people food. Brown bread, you were kind of considered, it was a status symbol. The whiter your bread, the more rich you were, because you had servants who could take the time to manually sift out the wheat. They're milling by hand, they're sifting out the wheat, they're baking that bread, and then you're also wealthy enough to sacrifice almost a quarter of your food, because that's how much you lose in taking the brain and the germ out. Where poorer people, they were just getting bread on the table, we got to eat, and so they had more of the browner bread, and they were getting the whole grain. So it definitely took the world by storm. People then had Wonder Bread. Women were not having to bake bread from home. We can now buy bread from the store. And then we had epidemics. Sue Becker talks about this, where we had epidemic proportions, a true pandemic of beriberi and pellagra, which are B vitamin deficiencies. So that's when the government said, yeah, they discovered their B vitamin deficiencies because we've taken it out of the bread, which is the staple of life. Grains have thousands of years. Bread is the staff of life, because for thousands of years, despite what the hunter-gatherer evolutionary basis say, humanity survives on grains. It's various grains, but it's grains. And you can see that throughout history. We have been farmers from the beginning. So for thousands of years, grain has been what we live on. Meat was for the wealthy, but if you could grow it, you could eat it. And so now, what people are predominantly consuming now, the vitamins and the nutrients have been stripped out of, and people started getting really sick. I mean, badly sick. And the government realized, oh, these B vitamins, we need you to put the brand and germ back in. The food company said, nope, we're not, because now we can double dip, because they were selling the brand and germ to the feed industry for cattle, because now, because of fast food and all that stuff, we now have these big feed plots, and it's a whole web of craziness, of why we're in the health mess that we're in. And so they said, okay, but you got to enrich it. So that's why we now have enriched flour. They put, out of like over 30 nutrients in, they've only put 5 back. So they put a couple of the B vitamins back. So we got rid of pellagra and berry. They later on realized that iron was important because kids were becoming iron deficient. So they put the iron back in. And then in the 1980s, I believe, babies were being born with birth defects due to a lack of folic acid. And so they said, oh, you got to put that one back as well. So they added that back in. So that's what enriched flour is only 5 of them have really been added back in out of over 30 of the nutrients, and you're still lacking all the fiber. So that's why we say that you have to mill it yourself. That's why now we buy the wheat berries. We actually get the whole wheat seed, which is what you start with. You grow the wheat plant, you harvest the wheat seeds or wheat berries, and that's what you mill into flour to bake bread. And you want to do it yourself at home, because then you get all of the essential nutrients, you get all of the vitamins, all of that fiber, all the things that God put into the wheat to help you digest it, and not just gluten and starch, because ultimately that's what you're left with. You remove that bran and the germ, you are left nothing but gluten and starch. And then on top of that, most of the bread in the store that you buy adds extra gluten in, still none of the fiber, and no wonder people have gluten issues, because now you're consuming gluten in a way that God never intended it to be eaten to begin with. So I think that's why people are sick, why people cannot have bread. But I hear many testimonies when people switch over to 100% freshly milled wheat. Not only is it delicious, it's amazing. I've never had a child deny it. But it's now giving you, so many people have said, I can have this bread. I can't have the bread from the store, but I can have this bread. It doesn't give me my gut issues. I'm not bloated or whatever the case is. And so that's what I'm talking about. So absolutely, white bread, white flour, bad. I agree with the wheat belly, the gluten-free people. We all have that in common, but they tend to throw out the baby with the bathwater and dismiss all wheat. And I say, no, hold on, middle ground. How about we just consume it the way that it was meant to be consumed? Let's actually have real whole grains for a change, and you may be surprised.
There is something new to me. I don't know. I'm hearing about it, and it's called 00 bread. And so I don't know if you've heard about that. 00. So some people have said, oh, I went to this pizza restaurant and I could have their pizza. And it's because they use the 00. I think I'm saying that right. But anyway, so I did a little bit of research, and the 00, it's from Italy, but it's what we're doing. It's exactly what we're doing.
Okay.
So they could have this bread being gluten-free. They're not celiacs, but they were gluten sensitive. And so they're like, I don't know why, but I can have this pizza on this, using this flour. So it's just kind of exciting to hear that that's what it is. It is what we're using. And it was the soft white, the soft white berry that we're using. And anyway, just to hear a few more people out there that typically would have shunned this.
You have to realize, and this is the one thing that I would beat in the most, is you have to realize that it is a night and day difference between white flour that you buy from the store, and then if you were to take the whole wheat berry, mill it yourself, make flour from the entire wheat berry, and then consume it yourself. It is night and day difference. It's basically the same or very similar to someone saying that they just can't have peanuts. Every time I eat peanut M&Ms, I break out in hives. I have all of these issues. They make me fat. They skyrocket my sugar. Well, you're having peanut M&Ms. Have you had a peanut? Like
Right.
just the peanut,
Exactly.
and see how you react to just the peanut. And yes, there are people with peanut allergies. So people will all say like, well, I have these peanut allergies. I'm not talking about you. You can't have a peanut at all. But there's a difference between peanut M&Ms and just the peanut. You have to realize that there is a difference and that it matters. It matters greatly when you have stripped out all the nutrients from the wheat plant, from the
Yeah.
wheat berry, and are
Yes.
just consuming the gluten and the starch. There's a huge difference.
What other grains have you worked with other than the wheat berries, or have you, that you really enjoy?
Last time I totaled, I have a collection of over 50 different types. And it does include a lot of varieties of wheat, because that's the beauty, is when you start going down this rabbit trail, you then realize, holy moly, there are so many varieties. It's like when you become a gardener and you realize, oh, there's more than just the one typical one or two tomatoes that you
Yeah.
find in the store. There's now like this mass, you have purple tomatoes, you have yellow tomatoes, like
Ah,
you, all these different varieties. Same thing with grains. So we have all kinds of variety with wheat alone, but then you also have all these other ones. First of all, of course, corn and rice, big grains, naturally gluten-free grains. Love them. Okay. Corn has been the main grain for a lot of Hispanic, Latino countries. So all Mexico, South, mainly Mexico, Central America, corn. Then you go into South America, they're on quinoa. Excellent grain, another gluten-free grain. And then you also have rice. A lot of Asian countries were on rice. So yeah, we have all of those. And then you have sorghum. Teff is another one. So this year, actually, I'm doing a Grains Explorer Challenge for 2024, where each month we are covering and challenging ourselves to use a different grain. And these are beyond just your hard red, hard white, soft white wheats, the common wheats that we know of. So there are so many grains around the world that, especially in the United States, we like to pigeonhole ourselves into just one particular type of food. But God created a variety of grains. So yeah, I'm currently experimenting myself with all of these, but I would say corn and rice and oats are my next most used grains. I flake oats myself, and then from that make like quick oats or whatever I do with the oats.
sorry to interrupt you, but what
Yep.
type of equipment do you need to flake your oats yourself?
Yeah, you typically need a flaker, and this comes in all kinds of ways. So if you have a mixer, so like a Bosch Universal, a Nutrimill Artis, even a KitchenAid, I think they're basically called flakers. So some are manual where you can crank it. Other ones are where they attach to the mixer, so they're run by the nice little engine in there, and it rolls. So you oats look like oat they look like wheat berries. So,
Is
and then
that the
you
oat
roll them
groat?
out. Yep, they're called oat groats.
I have those.
And so you can buy the oats. Yep, you can buy the oat groats, and then you can just roll them yourself. So instead of buying the old fashioned oats from the store, you can actually do that at home. And it's going to be
My
the
lip.
most nutrition that you can get. And then from rolled oats, you can easily make quick oats. You just throw them into a food processor or a blender and like really quick. And because all it is you're just breaking them up a
Okay.
bit more.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's it. You can make oat flour. You can mill it yourself. The oat groats to make oat flour. Yeah, and you can do that not just with oats. You can do it with barley. You can do it with sorghum. You can do it with a wheat berry. There are many different grains that you can just flake and roll them out and do
Wow.
it
I've
as you
got a
go.
lot of work. I've got a lot of work to do. So I'm like stuck in this little world. I mean, I have them. My bucket of oat groats is still not open. I need
Yeah.
to open it and get familiar with that. But I was like soft wheat,
Mm,
uh, hard white, hard red.
yep.
I don't do a lot with hard red because I'm not crazy about the way it tastes.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I just don't have the right recipe. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like my little world right here. I even have
Yeah.
icorn and is that how you pronounce it? Icorn?
Yep.
And I still haven't opened the bag. Like I need to get it out
Yeah.
and use it. I need to branch out. So I'm gonna branch out. So now I'm saying
Mhm.
it. I have to do it because I said it. What equipment would you suggest, just to get started? Like just the
Mhm.
basic, we can use our hands to knead the dough. We don't have to have the Bosch, although it's amazing, and I'm so glad
Mhm.
I do. But what would you recommend? Like you are ready to get started, just do these few little easy things and boom, get going.
So many people actually already have a very powerful blender, like a Vitamix or a Blendtec. Those mill up grains pretty well. Now it's slow. It's a little bit at a time. Okay, you can only do like a cup at a time. And when you're like me, that will take you an eternity if you're having to make as much as I do. But that's something that you can start off with. You can buy just a little 5 pound of wheat berries. It's actually not that expensive. And you can start from there. You pursue it. I do recommend getting a standalone grain mill. So it can be an impact mill, a stone grind mill, and there are many, many out there. So I actually do have a free newbie guide. If you go to my website, grainsandgrit.com, I think up at the top it says like freebies or something like that. And it's a free guide and it actually walks you through the steps of how to get started. But bottom line is you do need a grain mill. Okay, then there's a variety. Look on Marketplace and eBay if you want to find one that is used. You can start small and get you one that fits your budget and then just start milling. And then from there, I only recommend 3 different types of wheat to start with: hard red, hard white, and soft white. Your hard reds are going to be for your yeast spreads, your soft white for your baked goods, like your cookies and your cakes. Start simple. Start with something that's easy, and those are the wheats that are easiest. They're more stable and just easier to work with. And so just start that and then get you one recipe and master that recipe. And I do have my simple yeast bread recipe that from there you can make like 7 different types of bread, but master that recipe, get really good and comfortable with one recipe, and then move on from there. And then, of course, you do have, if that's just not working for you, you do also have your quick breads, your muffins, your pancakes, your waffles. Super easy to do. Okay. Super crazy easy. And those will take multiple types of wheat. You can pretty much throw whatever wheat you got at them, and they're going to be great. And so that's just what I recommend. Just start simple. And with baking, it is a journey, and especially bread baking, it's a journey because there's so much to learn, especially when you go into this realm of milling your own grains. You're then going to realize you have so many more options and ways to do things. But start simple, one thing at a time. And I don't recommend starting off with sourdough. Start with commercial yeast. It's okay. You'll live. It'll be fine. And because that way you'll get the experience under your belt and know what works and what works for you, and go on from there.
Definitely. Great advice. And I know even for me, because I kind of dropped it out as my kids went off to college and, things just got busy in a different way. And now I'm bringing it back in. And when I made that first loaf, I was a little rusty.
Yeah.
By the second loaf, we learned from our mistakes and we got it. So
Yeah.
hang in there. If the first one doesn't succeed, I remember back when I would make it for my kids and I would forget salt. I would
Yeah.
forget to put salt and we'd eat it and we're like, what is wrong with this? It
I know.
doesn't taste good. And it's like, I can't throw it out because it's, ingredients that I paid for. So
Mhm.
we just put some butter with salt in it to
Yeah.
help. But anyway,
I
it
love
gets
salt.
better. So hang in
Mhm.
there. And so, Felicia, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation, a very much needed conversation with us. And guys, give it a try. And if you're already doing it, I want to hear from you guys. Is this something that you are excited about and you're ready to try? Are you well seasoned? We want to hear from you. Give us a little bit of input. If you don't mind, subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so that you can be notified when I come out with new content. But I'm going to put Felicia's, all of her information down below in the description area so that you can click on her links and start learning all that she has to teach you. So you guys have a great day.